You've heard it said before that you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And the importance of that first impression in today's world is becoming more and more important. And today I have with me Allan Bell. Allan is a dear friend, at the same time a consultant, a sales consultant, coach, and a partner at the Academy for Sales, who has some very special, I would say, gifts.
Thank you.
Yeah, and today we're going to make it all about helping you get that right impression and build a story, a visual story around your brand. So, Allan, welcome to our show, our podcast.
Thank you for having me. Very much appreciated.
Wonderful, Allan. I want to start off with, we've known each other now for almost 2 years.
Yes.
Since the beginning of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a bit about your story.
Sure. So I'm Allan Bell. I'm a co-founder of a business here in Dubai called Pixel Roses, photography business. But my background, so I quit the corporate industry about 2.5 years ago. My background is 33 years plus in information technology sales, from the ground door knocking, as we would call it, cold calling, right through to enterprise sales with $25 million deals. So I've done it all. Loved it. Thought I would finish my career there, but decided actually I found a completely new passion. And that's what I decided to pursue 2.5 years ago.
So what is that passion all about?
It's about helping people get the right branding, personality, vision, be the front and center of their businesses through images and video. So I'm a photographer. Completely changed career from IT to photography, and I love every minute of it.
Well, if I can maybe just build on that, I think with your background in sales and your experience, your depth and breadth and understanding of that image, I think you bring in a sales lens into the photography that you do.
I guess so. I think so. And we love capturing personalities, but in my experience, being able to relate to someone, to build a rapport, to break the ice, if you like, during a shoot, it makes all the difference. And it's the same in sales. You've got to be able to, people buy from people, so you've got to be able to relate and build that rapport and relationship with them. So I bring that to the photography, and that's why we get wonderful results.
So tell us, or tell me and tell our audiences, how do you help me or help anyone watching today with the photography to make that better first impression?
So some of it is an education process. So a lot of people don't realize, I think in today's digital world, they're beginning to realize more, but you've got to educate them about the value of images. That first impression, we all, it's sort of published papers and research and things, we can view someone's image and make a snap decision about them. Whether that decision is right or wrong, we form that first impression in less than half a second. And there's lots of research out there about that. And if your image, that first impression, isn't right, you could lose a sale. You might not even get involved in a sale, because in today's world, 62% or more of 62% of buyers look online before they'll even make contact. So on that basis, if part of it is that initial impression and thinking, I don't like the look of that person, they're not smiling, they're not engaging, on to the next, swipe left.
And really what that does is, whether you're a sales professional, you are running a sales team, or you own a business, basically it's you won't even get a second chance. They're not coming back because that first impression made a lasting impression, and they're on to bigger and better things down the line.
And sometimes you might not even know that you're being scrutinized, if you like. I've seen this both from a sales perspective, but even things like recruitment. So much recruitment these days is done online, and research is done around a person and their social media status, what they're doing on LinkedIn and so on, that again, you've got to create that right impression online. It's a digital footprint. So it needs to be at your best, and that's where what we do comes into that.
And you mentioned more than 60+% of people wanting to do business with someone will look them online, and I think that number is just going to keep increasing as the years continue moving.
Indeed, very much so. I think so.
So, Allan, I am let's say a business owner. I am an entrepreneur. I am a sales professional, right? Now, am I just a picture? Or there are multiple pictures that can be captured to build a better connection with potentially clients, potentially opportunities? What do you think? Or what have you done on that?
So that's a really interesting question, because it's not about a picture per se, or multiple pictures, or an image bank as we would call it in the industry. It's about you as a personality and as a brand. So anything that supports your personality, your brand, your essence, if you like, your story of the person behind the business is what's crucial. And anything that you use in this digital world to present that, if it's high quality and that's aligned to your brand, then fantastic. If it isn't, then I would be questioning why not. Because you also want to create that leadership position in terms of impression, in terms of the essence of the brand. And in my experience, particularly in the SME space, the small to medium enterprise space, a lot of business owners don't understand how important they are to the business as the top salesperson, because they've got that passion, that drive, that motivation for the business and what they do and why they do it, that needs to be captured in that media, of images, video, the products. So everything about themselves is part of the brand of the front and center of the business, but also the business itself is part of that brand. So everything underpins each other, but unless the leader's got it right, then who knows what's going to happen.
Right. Today the concept of people learn by watching, by seeing, by hearing, by doing. So auditory, visuals, most of humanity are visuals.
Yes, very true.
And building on what you're saying is today, what story, as you put pictures, they're not standalone pictures. Pictures put together the right way builds a story.
Yep.
That story then connects at an emotional level with individuals. And today, there are opportunities that actually, what they say and research shows, there's a saying that goes, people buy emotionally, but they justify it logically.
Yes, very true. I've done that myself.
And the reason why, people have noticed this pattern in them. Well, why did I buy that? Well, at the moment they were emotional. And research today on what drives buying patterns is there is a hormone called oxytocin. And oxytocin releases that, it's a hormone that's released that builds, you can say, kind of like intimacy, builds trust. And the way you can actually release oxytocin in someone's brain is to make them see certain images, and research shows if you put certain images, with a certain storyline, people that saw these images, they were being studied, actually were more likely to give money to charity, for example.
Yes.
And that's an angle where today science is showing us that unless you're utilizing imaging, unless you're utilizing pictures, images, videos to connect with your audiences, you could be leaving some opportunities on the table.
Very much so. I think an analogy for me is, think about when you've ever been to a restaurant and you look at the menu and you see images on the menu. Some restaurants don't even put images on there, which again I would question why not, as a photographer, as well as going to restaurants myself. But if you look at that menu and you see food that looks visually stimulating, you create that emotional connection. You think, oh, I really like the look of that. Trying to be healthy, salad. I'll have that salad. Yeah. But if you see images which are substandard and not great quality, you're thinking, am I in the right restaurant? Do I want to go somewhere else? So you can create that emotional connection just in that example of food, food and beverages, same thing. But you can use that in any form in the business around people, particularly for me as a photographer. I love connecting with people. I love hearing their stories, what journey they've been on, why do they do what they do, what gets them out of bed in the morning. But also, I'm a great believer in my long IT sales career. I came across many people that you'd start that connection, you'd be having a conversation, and then they'd be saying, oh, I used to play country level tennis, or I used to play at this level on cricket and things like that. And that's what I would call in English terms an alter ego, but it's the essence of the person. They're bringing the same drive, passion, motivation for what they do and their business to something outside work. And that, in today's world, we live in this digital world, there's no getting away from it. We need a 360-degree view of a business owner, an entrepreneur, a sales leader, salespeople. People are looking for that. We just live in that world now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You talked a bit before about some restaurants not putting an image on the menu.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of, as if they don't want to sell, and just that one example, when somebody spends all this time, effort, energy, resources in building the back of the business, so building the kitchen, putting a menu, hiring staff, and then the one thing that can actually throw the whole thing away is this front end of the business. It's that moment the customer walks and start looking at the menu.
But so to give you an example, and this is classic, as I was coming to the office, in the corridor there were some menus on a poster board. And you think during the pandemic, how many people have been buying food delivery services, particularly here in this region? You look at the menus that are there, and there were 2 without any images at all. So it's assumed, I'm assuming by the restaurant, the food delivery service, that what XYZ thing is going to look like, and assuming you know how it's going to taste. If you repeat ordering, you might do, and that's fine. But if not, if you're a first-time customer, you'd automatically, for me, gravitate to menus with images. And then of the 2 that had images, one looked really nice, and the other one, I thought, it's not selling the brand. So if I'm a first-time customer that's just seeing a menu, and I don't know anything about the restaurant, I've not eaten there, which one would I go for? I would choose the one where the images are more enticing.
Absolutely. Working in the food service industry for many years before, we had a saying that goes, the eye eats first.
Yes.
And it's how, whether you take a picture of something, or you have a very appetizing dish displayed in the in the cafe or the restaurant, then that really makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Now, Allan, I know that from a sales coaching perspective, from your experience, we've been working together for quite some time, and I'm really I get excited every time I assign you, or we find the right opportunities to work on. And I know you've worked with sales teams together with at the same time with business owners that are involved in the selling. So, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest, let's say, challenges that those, whether it's the entrepreneur who is involved in sales or their sales teams, what are the challenges that we can possibly pinpoint so that our audiences can be aware of?
I think it's worth putting that question in a context in terms of, it'll depend to a large extent on the size of the business and the size of the opportunities that are being worked on, as to what the sales team looks like, what the organization looks like. I've worked on $25 million deals where I'm running a campaign with 18 people as part of a team across multiple organizations on behalf of a client. Yeah, that's completely different to a small business entrepreneur with 3 or 5 employees, where they are the front and center of the business. and taking it to market, versus some of the coaching we've done with different organizations. So if we take the small to medium enterprise market as an example, I think there's an education piece, what I said earlier about entrepreneurs and business owners have that drive and passion, and customers, prospects, want to see that drive and passion in the business. You also, in often times, get like for like peer matching. So an owner of a business is more likely to see the owner of a business they want to sell to, than not, because of that peer matching in terms of CEO title, co-founder, whatever it might be, versus a salesperson who is still being blocked by the CEO secretary, if they're going that high, or an operations manager or whatever. There's people in the way. So there is that aspect to it. But what I also find is, for small businesses particularly, that education piece, think about selling as both an art and a science. So I was working with one client recently, doing a little bit of coaching, where they were having to write down questions that they were wanting to ask the client to try and guide a conversation. Mm-hmm. But they were so focused on, I've got a list of questions, I'm going to go through the questions one after the other, that they forgot to turn it into a conversation. So it was question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And after 3 or 4 of these, I said, well, just hang on a minute. Let's have a conversation, because you know the material in your head, but you have to adapt and listen. And this is a key thing for salespeople, particularly, is salespeople tend, particularly if they are still learning, to be speaking and waiting to speak. And by that, I mean they aren't listening to what the customer is saying. So I could ask you a question, Ramez, be it an open question or a closed question. You will answer it, and I'm not thinking about how you responded. And I should be, as a professional salesperson, thinking, why did Ramez give me that answer? What lies behind the answer? I should also be showing interest in what you've said. Yeah.
Even what did I mean by my answer?
Correct.
Because sometimes we don't know what people are saying.
That's true. So we've got to interpret it. And part of that, I know the coaching we do through the academy is that interpreting. It's that checking, that check and balance of, have I heard you correctly? This is what you said. But then it's also the implications. So you said this. Why is that important? What happens if you don't do it? And by doing that, we're using questioning and listening skills, active listening, to be able to then come up with guiding the conversation, making and helping the customer feel good that we're listening, we're actively listening, we're interpreting what they're saying, and then we're coming up with the solutions. Again, something I've seen a lot in entrepreneurs. I have a product. So if the only product you've got is a hammer,
then everything is a nail.
Correct. Yeah, isn't it just? So what you have...
then you see everything as a nail and you just go...
So that's all you're going to try and sell. And a lot of business owners I've seen, again, in the SME space, well, I want to sell you this because this is what I've got. And they jump straight into the solution, the hammer, rather than understanding, well, actually, do you need a hammer? What are you trying to pin up, put on the wall? Why do you need it to hammer a nail in? What's the outcome that you're trying to achieve? Yeah, so those are some of the things that I've seen in the, as we've been doing this.
Just building on what you're saying, one of the biggest elements that drive the emotional aspect of a buyer is feeling that is trust.
Yes. Yeah,
so one of the elements that actually builds trust, according to research, is active listening. What you've just said, Allan. When someone is saying something and you don't just go to the next point. Someone said something and you say, tell me more. Why is this important? How long has this been going on? And has that caused this? Then maybe asking some of these implication questions. Now, in our, let's say, in our world, some of the beliefs that people have could hold them back from digging. Like, for example, does the customer have enough time to talk to me? Does he want me to ask these questions, or let me just go in and out and just vomit my product or service on top of them and then go out and hope they're actually gonna wanna buy this? And what we find that what the research talks about, what the research mentions, is those representatives that had a better engagement, a better two-way conversation with clients, were the ones where when they left, the client felt like, wow, I like that person. They listened to me.
So I think there's a lot of stages in that process, in the sense of you have to build that credibility and rapport. Why, if that person's approached you, first question is, what can I do for you? But why have you actually picked me out in this scenario? I mean, I get this from a photography point of view, and the reason people pick Pixel Roses out in my business from a photograph perspective is because we capture personalities of the brand, the business, the person. We do the product, we do various facets of that in amazing images. So a picture paints 1,000 words. And I use what we do in social media and elsewhere. I'll carry, if I'm doing a networking event, I'll carry an iPad with images on it. But that is building credibility, and it helps break the ice again in terms of rapport and everything else, and build a trust. People can visually see, I'm good at what I do, or my team's good at what it does. Yeah, and that, I think, is a key component, you're right, in terms of building that trust and rapport. I think beyond that, we need to then show that interest in the client or the prospect and their issues and challenges that they're facing. In my IT sales career, have been in positions where someone said, oh, you've only got 10 minutes. Yeah, and we're still there an hour later, because we've built the rapport, we've demonstrated credibility, and then we're showing interest in them, who they are as a person, why they do what they do, what business challenges and things are they facing, what's keeping them awake at night. And without jumping, again, straight into the solution, we're getting that understanding and then thinking, is there a fit? And sometimes I've walked away from prospects, customers, whatever, and said, sorry, we're not able to help. I know someone that can, though, and that is a useful thing to do in terms of building credibility, and hopefully one day we'll be able to get back in touch and work together. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, interesting.
When you're... if we go back to the challenges, that you've talked about, sales professionals are sometimes one-sided, so they go in, don't have the proper ability to, ask the questions. You've transitioned into a bit of that first image and first impression. Let's build something that we have, or let's talk about something we have from our systematic selling strategy program, and that is known as the your story, building your story. Right. You've said, when you're maybe talking with potential clients in the photography side, you'll bring some of your pictures and you'll do that. And imagine people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And what can professionals do today to be ready, better prepared to share their story, which helps them build that first initial conversation and find a possible common ground with the potential client that they are interacting with?
I think it's again another interesting question, because many of us, and I would put myself in this bracket initially, are not willing to talk about ourselves at that personal level. Yeah, because we sort of, why would they want to know that? In fact, I remember having
I'm not interesting enough.
Classic.
Yeah.
So I remember having a sales director who said that to me. He said, not that I wasn't interesting. I mean, he might have meant that really.
You're not interesting, Allan.
But what he was saying was, he said, you don't tell people about you, the real you. And I said, well, why do they want to know that? I'm there to sell my product or service. Yeah. Why do they want to know what I do? He said, well, you've just written some music that you've had played in public. You've done this, you've done a skydive, you've done that. Those are interesting topics to talk about. And I was very much, oh, they won't not want to know that because, yeah. And then I had that light bulb moment and thought, you know what, actually they're right. So when we're talking in this, I'm sort of giving you a long answer to the question, but when we're talking in this context, if I now say to people, I spent 33 years in IT sales in the corporate world, and then all of a sudden I took the decision I'd had enough and I was going to pursue my passion, people want to know why. Yeah, they want to know what was it about photography that just had you so, wow, this is what I want to do. And I can go into that story. So I think...
And it will actually trigger commonalities, because a lot of individuals maybe are in jobs that they don't like as much.
Particularly today.
They maybe have other passions and they want to know about how did you make that transition. And that builds trust, credibility, and connection before anything else, before you buy from an individual. You know, you have that. So sorry, I interrupted you there. So,
but it's a key point, and you know, having gone through that whole process myself, set up a business, trying to make it work in a pandemic when we need to be in front of people, and a lot of people are, you know, well, can you take a picture of me wearing a mask? Yeah. Makes it somewhat challenging to bring out the personality unless they've got, you know, different face masks and so on. But it's a process and a journey that I've been on. And actually, on that note, that's why I started my own networking event, Break the Ice. And that's why I called it Break the Ice.
Alan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Break the Ice event?
So Break the Ice is an online networking event on Zoom. I started it, in fact, a year ago, yesterday. I did the first session. I run it every 2 weeks. And it's for business owners and entrepreneurs based in this region, although it seems to be extending into throughout the Middle East and beyond. It came about because when I left, and it took me a while to figure this out during COVID and everything else, but when I left the IT industry on a Thursday night, because we're in Dubai at the end of the week, and on Friday I'm sat there at home thinking, right, I'm going to be a photographer now. How am I going to make that work? And where are my customers coming from? Completely different to being, you know, Allan Bell as a brand versus having a $70 billion company behind me with all its marketing and brand awareness and everything else. It took me about a year to figure out, well, 9 months to figure out, actually, I need to do something different. And I needed to build a LinkedIn profile, to develop Allan Bell, get my message out there for Pixel Roses and so on. But also, as I was transitioning, working out, I was building my skill in photography, doing all sorts of different things, but needed to build a following. And the way I did that was starting an online networking event called Break the Ice, aimed specifically at entrepreneurs, business owners, SMEs, and connecting them as a free service so that they could do business together. Where it led to is I get people keep wanting to come back to it, but one of the ways that we can sell in today's environment is relationship networking. So people get 2.5 minutes, talk about themselves and their business, but no sales pitches allowed. One is because we need to educate them how to do a good sales pitch, to be honest, in a lot of instances. 2, because people buy from people. Yeah, so if they can get their story in 1.5 minutes of the 2.5 minutes, that's what I allow them to do, and I prompt them to bring their story out. Why do you do what you do? What made you move from engineering into setting up a fintech, cryptocurrency-based business? These sort of things. So it becomes almost like a mini interview as an approach. And as a result, I'm getting I'm getting Pixel Roses brand out there into the market. And I've grown my LinkedIn following from 346 followers to 9,000 in less than a year.
Superb. Awesome. So I'm going to go back to something we started talking about, which is that first impression.
Yep.
And we were mentioning the story, and today we know that in sales, the touch points are no longer face-to-face, but it's also moving onto the online world. So Alan, from a sales photographer perspective, you know, what can you tell individuals to do in order to improve some of their online touch points. So they grab that attention with, from these potential clients that could be, interacting with.
We've already talked about the importance of image.
Yes.
So having a good profile image on things like LinkedIn is primary. Mm-hmm. We've talked about images in the sense of the business, the products, the services, your team is important. Letting people know, the about us on the website is key. So I'm not going to talk about images now. Yeah. What I want to mention is little things. So if you're doing, I'm not going to talk about social media per se, because there's lots of organizations are specialists in doing that on behalf of business. But little things, if you are sat in a Zoom meeting, what's your background? What is around you? How are you portraying yourself? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. You've got a bookshelf full of interesting books, mainly factual, Atomic Habits, that sort of thing, sales books and so on. But I've been in Zoom sessions with a senior financial analyst, who has got Finance for Dummies on his bookshelf. And he's talking to clients, and I'm saying, do you want that book showing to a client? So think about your background and your surroundings, and don't miss the opportunity to present your brand with your logo and yourself and so on. Don't fill the screen with it, but just keep it simple. Represent your brand through Zoom, because that's a visual experience, and that's a simple thing you can do, which a lot of people don't think about.
Absolutely. So a simple backdrop makes a big difference. Watch what is behind you, because at the end, I know today there is a thin line for us, and this is going to continue, utilizing the online medium to connect with individuals, and whether we like it or not, our personal life is showing up in our business life. And
you certainly get all those jokes on, you see them on social media about someone in their pajamas or whatever, and not realizing, and so on. But if your brand and you are important to your business and how you represent yourself, and it's a quality image you want to present, get it right. It's not that hard to do.
Right. Superb. So let's look at the, we've talked about challenges from a sales perspective. So what are the typical challenges that sales professionals do? How about business owners or those that lead a sales team that you've coached? What are some of those challenges that maybe you've seen that were holding them back in the past?
So certainly I've seen in my career that sales leadership needs to adapt to an environment in which a lot of what we do now isn't face-to-face. I actually personally don't believe I like face-to-face interaction, and if we can go for a coffee, in these times, I will do that. But a lot of the time, Zoom or online can be good enough. So the cost of sales can come down, because if I have, let's say, a half an hour, 45 an hour meeting with a prospect, it's not taking me an hour to drive there and an hour to drive back. So I'm more efficient.
Yes, maximizing the time.
So maximizing the time. But when I moved from the UK to this region, to Dubai, the immediate reaction, I'd spent something like 15 years being a traveling salesperson, in the sense of I could work from anywhere. I would work from a client's premises, from an office in London, from home at weekends or evenings or whatever. I just worked, but for me it was about making my number or exceeding the number. And as long as the management was accepting that, as long as I was doing the right things and blowing my number, all was good. So if I wanted to take Friday off and play golf, which I don't play golf anyway, but if I did, I could have done that. And I think in this region, it's the pandemic has driven a lot of management to realize actually they don't have to be in the office anymore, and we can still get the work done. But from a sales point of view, I think some sales leaders, in my experience, are still adapting to that and thinking, how do I control bit of a control freak approach. How do I control my salespeople and make sure that they're putting the hours in and everything else? Whereas in reality, it's all about, are they being effective, but are they delivering the number? And then watching the trends. The other thing I found, and this is a digital thing, I think CRM, customer relationship management systems. Many of them, the sales management and leadership in an organization gets so in depth about completing CRM inputs for every action and task and customer meeting, fill a form. Yeah, great. I don't mind doing that. I'm actually quite process driven myself, but it was getting to the stage, and I think it still is for a lot of organizations, where there are tools like Medic, which is great for deal management, but they spend so long filling in forms and putting data into Siebel or whatever CRM system out there, you become ineffective because you're not in front of customers. And if you're not in front of customers, you're not really selling, because
it's the minutes theory. You gotta spend the more time, minutes you spend in front of a client. Can I build on something here? I think you've talked about a lot of different ideas, and first that I want to talk about is this efficiency. So time efficiencies. I think today we are becoming more conscious of the need to be more efficient, but at the same time I can have a quicker meeting, but am I actually properly equipped to have an effective meeting?
Effective, good word.
So effective here, that involves, as you were talking about, the possible storytelling, the ability to enhance your listening and questioning skills, your ability to...
Sorry, what was that?
And those are some things that we took for granted. As someone said to me, Ramez, the face-to-face world, when you could meet someone face-to-face, it kind of shadowed the importance to be an expert at this technical ability to properly connect with someone, to really refine your ability to speak, to say things. So your presentation skills, your storytelling, your image, all that got magnified because you're looking at a screen right now and you're seeing me and Allan, and all your focus is on that. Every movement that we make is like a amplified times 10.
And in a way, again, what I would call traditional sales activities, all that pre-work you need to do in terms of planning a meeting. Why are you going to see that customer? What's your objective for you? What's their outcome that they're likely to want? And how do you get them to articulate that during the meeting are all key points. So understanding the questions, the techniques and so on. Just doing the research on the customer. So many times I can talk to a business owner and in terms of coaching, and I'll say, well, what do you know about the client? Well, I looked at the website. Okay, which bit of the website did you look at? Well, I did the About Us page. Okay, what about the products? What about their industry? What IT industry, classic at the moment. So many component shortages, shipping gone from 6 weeks to 12 weeks and beyond in terms of availability of parts and so on. It's a mess. Yeah, so what is a business owner facing in that environment, and how can I leverage that industry knowledge and expertise just to ask a couple of questions? What's keeping you awake at night? What is the impact of this global whatever, the pandemic? How is it affecting your business? So just do the basics and actually you will stand out amongst the crowd.
Allan, thanks a lot for sharing a lot of these insights, and I know we can spend hours digging into stories and examples of how to really help our audiences improve and get better and watch out for certain things. I'm going to call on your sales photography expertise in here, and if we can give some tips for our audiences today. Let's say I have a profile and I want to do a small audit, and what can you tell me to improve the way I come across, the way I communicate, my personal brand, my company image in on my profiles, let's say on LinkedIn.
So if we're talking about LinkedIn, the first thing I'm going to say is everyone's got one of these, not necessarily an iPhone, but a phone of some capability with a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. The key about a good profile image, and this is why I always recommend you go to a professional photographer, because they have the experience and should know what they're doing. Although I'll talk about that in a minute.
Should know what they're doing.
should do, yes, very much so. But for LinkedIn particularly, all you've got, well, you've got two things immediately in terms of a small circle, which is your profile image, and the recommendation is 60% plus of that should be your face with a plain background. This is LinkedIn's recommendation. Hootsuite and others have come up with all this sort of stuff, yeah? And psychological papers again, in terms of how you form the right impression. Now, the reason I picked the phone up is many people do a selfie. Selfies are for Facebook and Twitter and, well, Twitter's text, isn't it? But other platforms, Instagram and so on. Yeah, thank you. Not for your professional image on a business network, which is LinkedIn.
There's plenty of photos out on LinkedIn that are really not well, not that great.
I've done a skydive over the Palm in Dubai. I also did one in Nottingham.
That is not
in the
on
UK.
Your profile picture.
That's
on LinkedIn.
not my profile picture on LinkedIn, but it could be. Some people do that, but it's not the business that I'm representing. I didn't do the photography myself anyway because I was too busy falling and being terrified. But as a process, you need to think about what's the purpose of your image. Is it for you, for your brand, to give the right impression so that people aren't going to go, I don't like the look of this person, I'm not going to deal with them. You want them to engage with you. And to do that is go to a professional. If you can't afford a professional photographer who has the experience and knows what they're doing, do not do a selfie. Give someone else your phone and get them to take the image for you.
Let's look at this picture, and if you can talk a little bit about this picture.
This picture is an image of someone that we did photography for, and I just wanted to use it as an example to illustrate the difference between taking a phone picture, and the camera's pretty good. I use the iPhone 12 in this instance, it works, versus a professional picture where I use then studio lighting and a Sony A7R4 professional camera. And the differences are interesting because if you look at the picture on the left, the one, as I've called it, shot by you, the idea behind that is I'm looking straight on, I'm not instructing the person how to pose, and I've just taken an image using the portrait mode in the camera. There's no lighting to it. There's, the picture under the chin is quite dark. He's smiling, so he's still engaging, head a bit of an angle and all that sort of thing. But it's, for a man, you do not take a straight on picture, and professional photographers should know this. So even on LinkedIn, if you show that image where a fella's here and they're doing this, doesn't look great, because that is, body language wise, is a no-no. For a male particularly, you can do open hands and these sort of things, but just little tips. So part of going to a professional is they should know how to help you to pose. So if you contrast the pose of straight onto camera to the image on the right, you'll see we've got the shoulders slightly turned, the head and the chin is towards the camera. We're getting the chap to lean forward, show a nice profile image, and we've got the lighting right, a little bit of contrast down one side, and some lighting on his right side, so a lit from the back. And even though it's a white background, he stands out from the background, he's not blending in. The image is much sharper on the right as well. We've gone for a plain white background, which LinkedIn themselves recommend for use on LinkedIn. You can use a plain color of black or whatever, but white tends to be the one that makes the face most obvious, or the sort of torso image stands out a bit more. Sharpness versus blurred, can be difficult to get a sharp image with a phone. I mean, most of them these days with the number of pixels and everything else are pretty good, but you've got to watch for that. It also, because of that, it makes the image look slightly flatter. And this is where lighting comes into its own in a professional studio. And certainly for Pixel Roses, we shoot in our own studio, or we go to a location and we have all the gear and lighting to do that. And the last point is, if you get even if it's an image with a phone, get it edited, either by yourself or someone else that knows what they're doing. Because again, that makes a subtle difference, and it is subtle, but it's important in the quality of the profile image. People see the image on the right and they will become engaged. And some of that is just the angle, the pose and everything else. And the smile is reaching the eyes. That is another big thing. So showing a little bit of teeth, smile has to reach the eyes. It's not a Wallace and, well, if you're from the UK, you'll know Wallace and Gromit, the characters, yeah, where you got these big teeth sort of show. You don't want to do that because that's false. Yeah. Works for plasticine characters, not for humans. So look at the images and think about the pose. But the other reason I say don't use the camera to do a selfie yourself is you distort the features of the face because your arms aren't long enough. So you need to get someone to take an image for you or of you from some distance, 2 or 3 meters. In the US, I can't remember the exact number, but there's a report by a number of surgeons, plastic surgeons, where the cases of people that are asking for nose and facial adjustments, plastic surgery, as a result of selfies, is trebled in the last 2 or 3 years. And that's because they're seeing this image where the nose is looking a bit wider and all, and the face and everything else.
It's like
and
that.
it's from a selfie because cameras distort if they're too close. Yeah, and certainly when I do some of this education as a WebEx, I show a visual of the difference between using a camera with the same lens going from close to far, and just you can see the way the features distort. So lots of tips.
Thank you so much, Allan. And I think today the main, I guess, goal was to, again, bring value to our audiences, introduce the audiences to give them a bit of a better understanding of who is Allan and the depth
Thank you for that.
and width and depth of knowledge and expertise. And I call you the sales photographer, because of his background, because of his insights. I mean, today, not only does he, are you able to help someone improve their image, yet you can take that person's image and coach their skills right when they are going in and knocking on the doors and getting in front of clients, know how to convert, and even help them manage a team and lead that team into bigger and better.
If I may say, it's one of the things I love, because it's great when we can help someone produce that image, but then we want to make sure they're using it in the right way. So they're getting in front of the target audience, and when they're in front of the audience, they know what to do and do it well, yeah, and get positive outcomes.
It's like, if you can get in the door, that's good, but once you get in the door, you have to be able to walk out with with the right value. And again, the principles that we talk about is the concept of ethical selling, where we want to make sure that we're giving value so we get value. And I think here, being able to break down beliefs, walls, fears, improve skills, communication, and really give someone a toolkit that allows them to achieve, let's say, more sales, sell more, sell faster, and profitably has been our motto. And this is what we are so passionate about doing as a team. All right. So Allan, thanks a lot for your time. If you'd like to learn more about Pixel Roses, feel free to connect with Allan. And until then, sell more, sell faster, and profitably.